So we are watching The Abyss
Uh,
by James Cameron.
oh, you
A
haven't seen it yet?
Yeah, well, we'll be watching it later.
Okay. So, so we're going to imagine what it could be
Yeah.
and then review that.
And have you predicted a quote from this movie?
I actually haven't. Did you?
Yes, it did.
Okay.
So this is from probably like the climax of the movie. Bud, I know you feel alone, all alone in that cold blackness, but I'm here with you.
Mm. You've kind of presaged, the metaphor of the whole movie. You're
Yeah,
referring to the metaphor of the whole movie.
that we're alone here together.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
It was sort of like the trust and care that the humans put in each other that convinced
Mm.
the aliens to not wipe out humanity.
Yeah, well, we can talk about this later, but I have a lot of questions about the aliens.
Yeah,
It,
the aliens are left mysterious, I think, on purpose.
yeah, yeah, that there were 2001 vibes.
Yeah, you don't need to know the deep lore of the aliens for this movie to work. In fact, the less you know about them, the more effective they are as a narrative device.
Yeah, but even metaphorically, the aliens were kind of still a mystery to me, you know? Like okay, well, obviously they represent light and sort of the light of goodness and the light of knowing the
I
dark,
think
you know.
I view them as very Old Testament God, kind of.
Oh, really? I
Yeah,
I didn't see it that way at all.
like at one point, like Thumper or whatever the guy's name was, Jammer,
Hmm.
he passes out with the alien coming to save him, and he said this was going to be my quote if you already picked the thing that I picked. Was he when he finally comes to after being rescued by the alien, he says, "I thought I was dead back there, and when I saw that angel coming for me."
Yeah, yeah.
So the aliens look angelic,
Hmm.
and they fulfill this almost biblical role in the story of like there are all these. Oh, wow, this is we're going right to the end.
Hmm.
I don't know if we want to do this, but uh, like this whole idea of like Noah's flood being averted because the creator sort of saw the goodness in humanity and pulled back at the last second. Like it's almost
Mm.
like like a retelling of the flood myth, but the flood never happens because people are actually kind of good.
Yeah, there is sort of a threat there of a greater storm. Uh, and there is a Noah's
I mean,
Ark type thing, yeah,
yeah,
with the ship
I
on the
would
ocean.
say kind of a threat is a significant understatement. When they have like mile high tsunamis approaching every coast in the world,
Yeah,
that's more than kind of a threat.
yeah.
That's a threat
Wait, with in Noah's Ark or of the
in
Abyss?
this movie
Yeah.
at the very end with the tsunamis.
Yeah. Well, there was also like a parting of the Red Sea type moment too, like when when Ed Harris got onto the alien capsule,
Yeah, it's
they sort of parted the part of the water for him to be able to breathe air again.
I got kind of a rebirth vibe from that. Uh,
Well, yeah, there's two rebirths in the movie. One that yeah. This one is less obvious.
well, no, well the one at the end is I feel the one that's more telegraphed because like subtext gets turned into context when on two separate occasions they're like, oh, you were doing this for 9 months in the womb.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What,
So then
what, what,
he
what, and he's talking about breathing water or
yeah,
yeah.
breathe, which is not how the womb happens, but we can we, I'm not we're like the nitpicking the science is just not a good not a
No.
productive endeavor.
No, in
Uh,
fact, that's what got them into a little bit of trouble in this movie. the lesson of the movie is sort of the same as is sort of the same as Piranha 2, which is like we're getting a little bit too reliant on the technology to the point where the technology in a certain way is controlling us as opposed to us controlling it. And it
Okay,
sort
that's
of
actually
controls our destiny.
that's not what I got at all.
Mm.
I got the sense that human nature was like too aggressive and too violent, and that as we've developed the technology, we haven't changed alongside this increased amount of power that we have.
Yeah, that's true. What in the movie tells you that?
So like the at the very end when they're showing him the slideshow of like mostly nuclear bombs,
Hmm.
this is 1989, and everyone's
Yeah,
everyone's most significant anxiety is nukes.
yeah.
So the the danger and the sort of inhumanity of nuclear weapons was kind of the center point of the aliens' apparent displeasure with humanity.
Hmm. Well, and that was actually going to be my quote, but this thematically didn't work. I just liked it because it was a funny quote. But right after the alien, when it so it dripped and dripped and dripped, and then it came to life on the ship,
Yeah.
and then the coffee, the bad guy, just
Hmm.
whacked it, and it went away. And then Lindsay,
Raise your hand if
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
That
Lindsay
was that
said, "Raise your hand if you think that was a Russian water tentacle."
yeah, that was a great line. That was legitimately funny.
Yeah, but that's sort of what that's sort of what I mean is, we get into trouble when we can't believe that the technology that there's something more powerful than technology, or when or we confuse something truly spiritually meaningful or for technology. Like we rely on technology for too much that we don't trust our own human spirit.
I guess
Like that,
Lindsay
whether you agree
does.
or not, that I think that's the point of
No,
the
I think the point of
movie.
the movie is something that Lindsay says out loud, which is he wants them to be Russian, so he sees Russians.
Yeah.
Like I think like his uh sort of his preconceptions and biases are interfering with his ability to see the world for what it really is.
Oh yeah. And Coffee is an interesting guy because he's
It's
completely blind.
it's weird. It's like he's a Lovecraft protagonist in this non-Lovecraft movie.
Hmm.
Like
He's
where like
he's plagued.
yeah, it's like descending into the depths is causing him to become paranoia
Yeah.
or paranoid, and like it's like
True.
his behavior is almost like fantastical Lovecraftian madness, you know?
Well, yes, yes. But I will
And
say,
he's like terrified of the things that lurk beneath the waves, and
hmm
like it's I don't know, I got some strong Lovecraft vibes in just this one character.
oh yeah, definitely, absolutely, yeah, because um that's certainly true, and obviously the title is a reference to that Nietzsche quote, which is if you look into the abyss is staring back at you.
But it reverses the Nietzsche quote because in the abyss there's beautiful, generous, angelic beings, and by looking into the abyss they learn to love again.
Well, I would say he's expanding upon the Nietzsche quote. And not having read any of his books, I think that looking into the abyss is, it can be a choice, or
Mm,
you can be forced into it. But either way, at one point in your life, you're going to have to face an abyss or two, or maybe
yeah,
many.
yeah,
And it might as well be a choice then. Wouldn't you want to choose to march into the abyss as opposed to, uh, be forced to, with your, like a prisoner, um, or outside of your own control, pushed into the abyss?
yeah.
And yeah,
It's also possible that the that quote is supposed to be a red herring to enhance the mystery of, or to at least to keep the mystery alive of whether or not these things are benevolent or evil.
yeah,
Like if you're starting out with if you start out with that quote, people are going to assume that looking into the abyss is a bad, damaging thing. You know, like
yeah.
I haven't read the book either, but that I highly doubt that Nietzsche intended for looking into the abyss to be a value neutral thing.
Um, yeah, well, I think what the abyss does is it heightens everything. And it kind of like the metaphor is so perfect because with the abyss comes darkness, solitude, um, pressure, you know?
Yeah, and it's
And
like pressure that's pushing Lindsay and Bud together in this
Nick, you hit it. You
particular
hit it.
case.
Oh man, I thought I was so brilliant for coming up with that. But but you came up with it too. Yeah, that's completely true. Like, well, for example, it can push, the pressure, the abyss can be good or bad, you know. If you go into it blindly backwards and um don't really understand what it is, or don't try to get something good out of it, you will crack and be consumed by it and fall into it like somebody else we know, you
Yeah,
know? Coffee. Or the abyss, that pressure and that darkness and that solitude can push you closer to people that you've become distant from. And it can, and that pressure causes everything that's not important to get pushed away, and only the core meaningful things to be able to you're able to look at it and focus on, you know. And and the darkness allows you, the darkness is scary, but it also allows you to meditate, and to again focus and have everything else around you be shut out, all the unimportant things, so that only the most meaningful things are, that are right in front of you.
like the whole movie is basically about their like Bud and Lindsay's marriage
Or divorce. Yeah.
or divorce. Yeah, although it's not finalized yet. Uh, like it's like the like his ring is obviously just is a full
Oh,
metaphor for
dude.
the marriage, like where
Okay, let's
he's
talk
he's
about that from the
yeah where
beginning to end. Yes, I
yeah
love
where
this.
like she notices the ring and she's upset that he's holding on to the ring and therefore the marriage. And then later on, like when like a door is about to slam on his hand and the ring holds the door open.
Well, you missed an important aspect, the toilet.
What? Oh yeah. Like the yeah. It's actually I do have that there. Like the toilet is like their relationship is in the toilet.
Yeah.
uh,
Well, he gets
and he
mad
wants
at
and he
her and he throws it into the toilet, and it's this gross,
this
like
blue
porta
stuff,
potty type blue stuff. Yeah.
which stays on his hand for the remainder of the movie somehow, like
Yeah.
despite the fact that he's submerged for large portions of it.
Yeah, well, okay, so that little scene with him throwing it in the toilet. So he gets mad at her, throws the ring in the toilet, then thinks about it for a second, and then quickly goes back and gets it. And he goes in with his hand into this disgusting depth, you know? It's a
Yeah.
tiny microcosm of the whole movie. He goes in with this into the grossest thing possible to retrieve something good, you know, which is the
Hmm.
ring. And he's marked by it, like you mentioned. He's
Yeah,
marked by his going under.
and that slowly, and like the blue hand does like slowly erode over the course of the movie.
Yeah, because well, I think the reason for that is like we learn from bad experiences. That's what the metaphor of the abyss is. So someone breaks up with us, bam, you're going into the abyss and you're sad and you're just toiling. And that's you in the abyss. And it, you know, it just the depth that you go into the abyss matches the, you know, the hurt that you are trying to recover from. In the abyss, though, you find jewels and you find beautiful things down there that you don't have access to on the surface. And then you bring up a jewel with you, and that's your, you know, that's how you heal. And that jewel is like wealth and value, you know,
Mm.
that you gain. But the jewels will fade, and you'll need to go down again because you'll become too separated, I guess, from the powerful darkness. But because he went down and he got that ring, he didn't know why he was doing it really. He just knew that he
That he
loved
had
her,
to, yeah, that he had to rescue the relationship.
that he had to rescue the relationship. And he didn't know why, or he didn't even know if it was the right thing to do, but he just kind of felt that he had to do it. And then what happened later? It paid off in a way that he could never have expected, you know,
Yeah,
when that door was shutting on him.
yeah, like love saved him,
Yeah, yeah.
and instinct kind of saved him too.
Yeah, it did. Exactly.
There's two things that I just like to point out and get out of the way.
Uh-huh.
One, Bud's name is Virgil.
Yeah.
We can just point that out and move on.
Yeah, it goes in with it goes in with Cameron not being that subtle of a filmmaker.
Yeah,
Because
the
they
the
even
comp
after that, one of them even says, Virgil, huh?
yeah.
But well, my question though about that, I do have one little thing to say is, okay, if he's Virgil, what's the obvious question?
Are they in hell, limbo, or heaven?
Well, who is Virgil's companion?
Dante.
So who's Dante?
The most well, like the most obvious person is Lindsay, because the rest of
Yeah.
the crew are just there for flavor. Bud and Lindsay are the main characters, and I think people are a little too quick to forget that, or that like the Divine Comedy isn't just the Inferno.
Yeah.
Like they're like it's almost like he does make it through hell and into heaven with the angels. They refer like they call them angels multiple times.
Hmm.
Then also the name of the ship and the company that they work for is like the Benthic, which
Okay. I didn't catch
means
that.
which refers to things that happen at the bottom of a body of water,
Oh, okay.
which
Yeah.
is which like isn't like so much of a of a metaphorical thing because that's a very appropriate name for a company that like does like deep water salvage.
Yeah. And it's true. I mean, I think Cameron is getting better at this point of hiding his of being okay with being misunderstood. I mean, he is very careful to insert a rational explanation for a lot of the goofier things, you know, like coffee's madness, for instance.
Yeah, they did a over explained that one.
Because
they
it
had
is because that's why H.P. Lovecraft is so hard to get, hard to access. Because people going mad from the darkness is kind of a hard thing to imagine, you know?
yeah, and like he goes like full on crazy, like cutting his own arm.
But he also explains Lindsay coming back to life a little bit too. Like he does a pretty good job of, maybe not a pretty good job, but he's like, in the cold I can stay alive for 10 minutes, before, or I could die for 10 minutes before getting, taken back to life.
Yeah, I feel like they could have done less explanation there too. Like she could have just said, "Let me drown, take me back to the platform, and then try to then do CPR on me or something like that." Like it would have been.
But I think that it what it's telling you is James Cameron is telling you, like, hey, this is I'm trying to make this work on multiple levels here. I'm trying to make it work as just a story, that scientifically everything can be explained, you know,
Mhm. Yeah,
up until the end.
yeah. I did a bunch of research on drowning, and now it's your problem. Uh,
Yeah. I think what he's saying is it's too easy to discount all this as just a big metaphor, you know. I don't want you to be able to call this a sci-fi movie until I'm ready to show it, make you believe it. But he made everything kind of believable enough up and then so that's when you did see the aliens, it was like, oh, this is something truly outside of the world.
I think if Lindsay was a little more skeptical and required a little more convincing, uh,
Yeah.
the movie probably would have been better.
Well, yeah, because she
Uh,
was sort of set up to be a sort of no nonsense, hard-nosed chick.
yeah, and she sees like some weird lights off in the distance that and like the creature like from a far distance away like flies down to the trench. And like she could have still been a little skeptical at that point because later on, like an entire alien ship like is basically covering her entire field of view and she reaches out and touches it.
Yeah, yeah,
So she could have been like a little bit more apprehensive about declaring the existence of aliens up until the big reveal.
yeah. Well, what's interesting to me is yeah, it is interesting how fully she bought into it so quickly, you know? And she wasn't the first to see it either. She was not the first to see the aliens. Even though she was the first to believe it, she wasn't the first to see it. You remember who the first to see it was?
Was it Jammer?
Jammer. Yeah.
Yeah,
And he didn't believe it. He didn't understand what it was, I mean. And then
yeah. Then he had a seizure.
um yeah. Like he couldn't comprehend it actually.
So okay, so if you hyperventilate too hard, you can change like the pH balance in your brain, which can cause someone to have a seizure.
Hmm. Oh yeah, you know
Uh,
everything about that.
uh, it you tip it's so like there's like some degree of like it's plausible that the seizure was caused just by purely mundane reasons and not like induced by the alien.
Well, again, Cameron was good about being like, "Hey, this guy's freaked out. Apparently, some people like go see, deep sea madness,
Mhm.
and like all the explanations are there." Yeah.
Yeah. Normally you would have like a much smaller, shorter seizure, but like yeah, it's like I said, we're not here uh
No.
to nitpick the science.
Yeah, we'll leave that to another podcast.
Yeah,
Um, Red Letter Media, maybe, or something.
I don't. Yeah,
Uh,
cinema
but
sins.
but yeah, I think the more metaphorical explanation for Jammer is it was so beautiful and so powerful that he couldn't comprehend it. And he
Well, like
was,
that's like a yeah,
yeah.
that's like a common thing to happen to people like during religious experiences. That they'll have like these uh these events that closely resemble seizures. Like they'll
Hmm.
start speaking in tongues and fall on the ground, start shaking and stuff.
Hmm.
And he calls it an angel, so like it does feel like it was a religious experience for him.
Yeah. But one that he couldn't handle, you know.
Yeah.
It was just too much. It was too much for him, that religious experience, which is one way that we, encounter that. There's many different reactions that people can have to seeing something immense and powerful,
Hmm.
So yes, so he had that reaction to
Hmm.
the aliens. Do you remember what Ed Harris's reaction was at first?
When was the first time he saw the aliens?
It was when he was subduing Jammer. So he was being a good guy, and he the whole time he sort of was a protector healer type figure to the rest of the crew. He kind of took responsibility for them all, and he told that's what he told the military guys.
Yeah, yeah. Like he is like the worthy leader
Yeah,
as opposed to uh
the
Michael
military guy.
Bain, who is the
Yeah, yeah.
the unworthy leader.
And I want to ask you what makes him unworthy in sort of a deeper metaphorical sense. But first, I want to talk about Ed Harris's reaction as opposed to Lindsay's reaction the, to the light. Because actually, Ed Harris's reaction was he chose not to believe it. He kind of dismissed it. He saw it and he knew that it was something powerful and special, but then he
Uh-huh.
but then he discredited it and he was like, I got things to worry about here, and then he moved along and sort of just it left his mind. He let it
Yeah,
he let it leave his mind.
like he was more focused on the task at hand than he was about proving the existence of aliens.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because one of my questions was why did they get divorced? Obviously that's that's like something that's not really said. I think this is the clue to it. He dismissed that beautiful thing, and it's something that she saw and she noticed and she realized what exactly it was and the importance of it right away. You said that it was a bit like unbelievable how quickly she
Ha-
accepted it.
yeah. Like going just like the process of going from being a scientist to a true believer
Yeah.
happened a little too quickly.
Yeah.
Like I think like this is a two and a half this is a almost a 3 hour movie. Like that they had the time to have like
Well,
that
I
be a
had
little
the
more
option to
gradual.
see the extended version and I declined once I saw how long it was.
Yeah. I think hmm, I think they're both more focused on like career. That seemed to be what was happening. Like she was completely obsessive about her work.
Hmm.
They make like the whole crew of the aircraft carrier or platform or whatever boat is like, oh, there's the cold stone cold bitch. She's
Yeah.
and all of that is just an absolute laser focus on career over basically anything else.
Hmm.
And honestly, Bud seems similarly obsessive, although in his case, it was less about the the boat and more about the crew.
Yeah.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
very obsessively taking care of the crew, which kind of goes back to what you were talking about earlier with him being a bit of a healer.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think maybe the crew meant more to him than she did.
Hmm.
Possibly. That's why she left.
yeah, and like she shows up and they immediately start having disagreements about the boat.
Hmm.
Like she goes to this knob and immediately is like, why is this set to this setting? Rah!
Well, I think that's all metaphorical too, you know. Like, do you think there's anything to the fact that, she was the one who created the boat? It was her boat.
Yeah, I mean, like you can also kind of look, see their interactions and kind of predict how the relationship was going on the downhill. Like maybe like the way they act around like about the ship is similar to how they act around the relationship, where she would just
Mm.
like point out like little imperfections that another person could have let slide.
Yeah, she was too controlling.
Yeah,
And
or
he kind of,
too yeah, too obsessive, too concerned about perfection.
hmm.
And the imperfection of the boat and the crew was actually I think a very clear visual choice. I think
Yeah.
so there's this initial scene on this military submarine, and everything is straight lines and right
Oh,
angles.
good point.
Every 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 person is speaking in short, curt, very
Direct.
information dense
Yeah.
communication, and and everything is very very tut tut. And so then immediately after that event happens, they go to Bud's crew, and there's a jukebox in one of the rooms and a soda fountain, and
Yeah.
they're all like in t-shirts that clearly haven't been washed in days,
Uh-huh. And they
and
all they
they're
all have like a bunch of facial hair and
yeah, they're like a lot of like banter and chit chat
yeah.
among them. So they clearly wanted to make this juxtaposition as clear as possible.
Yeah.
And I can imagine that Lindsay would not be particularly excited about the the pinball machine
Yeah.
on her boat.
Yeah, it was a very masculine, the man zone, the man
Oh,
cave.
the man cave, yeah.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
very
there was kind of
it's
like a
very
man cave
man
aspect
cavey.
of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that that's an important point too, because like it kind of reminded me of when Bud went to onto the alien ship and
Hmm.
and do you remember his first words to the aliens?
No.
He goes, "Howdy."
Howdy. Oh yeah.
And he's like to compared to them, he's just, you see how frail and how unsophisticated humanity is compared to this grand thing.
Hmm.
But humans can actually access, like, we to compared to them, we are very insignificant and like powerless and goofy. But if we dive into the abyss and we meet it authentically, that we have access. We can't become the aliens. We can't be as powerful as them, but we have access to their power, you know?
So here's okay. So they make such a huge deal of like the super special breathing fluid
Hmm.
that they use to go super deep. And I think the intended purpose of that is that you have to become more like the water creatures in order to like enter their realm. Like you have to become
Nick,
like them.
oh my God. How do we think so? Well, we grew up in a,
Well, and
together.
also like
Yeah,
this, and
so
this
that's such an incredibly important point.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think because like otherwise they if you're introducing a completely science fiction technology into your modern movie, you
Hmm.
have to have a really good reason. He like Cameron really wanted
Yeah.
people to be breathing water. That was important to him, and
Hmm.
they reference they talk about this stuff throughout the whole movie.
Hmm.
So I think like it's. I'm not surprised at all that we both came to this conclusion, because I think this is a case where Cameron wanted people to, if not like consciously, at least subconsciously, sort of see people adapting to underwater and becoming more aquatic.
And what metaphorically is becoming aquatic mean?
I think he's like we're like the ugly, violent, and dangerous humans of the surface need to become more like these sort of serene, peaceful water creatures. And like
Yeah.
this change in this like physical change is kind of sort of representing a more emotional and mental change.
Yeah.
You know, he's like
Yeah.
he didn't go down there to save himself. Like he went down there as a an olive branch to the aliens, so that they so that humans wouldn't have cause damage to them.
Oh, do you think that he was that aware of what he was doing?
That's what they that's what they said. Like it's in like the characters say it out loud. You know,
Oh,
this is equivalent to declaring war on an alien
yeah,
species.
but I think that him going down there, because I think, well, here, what I think the whole movie is about is Ed Harris's journey. It's a mystical journey.
Like
The,
the gathering of sacred knowledge kind of thing.
yes, yeah, biting from the apple, as it were. And that's why I bring up that beginning part, or when he first encountered the beings. He sort of dismissed it. He didn't outright dismiss it. That Michael Biehn did. He's like, what the he Michael Biehn actually saw the thing and interacted with it and still denied it. Ed Harris sort of saw
Uh,
it and was like, hmm, okay, and then he forgot about it. He didn't dismiss it, but
Michael Bean is kind of a or coffee, as you should call him, coffee.
yeah.
Uh, it's it rolls off the tongue better too. Yeah, because like he starts out just being pure like no nonsense military. I'm in charge. This is our
and
mission
kind of
statement.
and kind of like arrogant too.
Yeah, and like and that maintains like that tone maintains as he gets crazier and crazier.
But you
But
were,
also,
yeah,
I think he acts as like a of a foil to Bud and Lindsay, obviously, but also like a demonstration of what the aliens are talking about. Like he comes into the ocean, into their realm, and he is just absolutely determined to bring his war to this new place.
hmm
He's like, I know these are Russians. The Russians are doing this. There's a Russian boat. Uh, and then and then like as once he becomes convinced that the aliens are not Russians, he's like, well, I'm going to deal with them the same way I would deal with Russians.
yeah,
I'm still going to bring my war here, and
yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna view these completely benign creatures as a threat, because that's just because he's supposed to be you know the straw man for everything that the aliens think is wrong with humanity.
Yeah, exactly. Um, and we'll get back to him in comparison to Ed Harris too,
Mm.
because I think that those are they're the two extremes of how to be. And so Ed Harris, his journey is the journey to the light. And it's for him, it's a slow journey, of knowledge and understanding, like, and grappling with the light, because when it comes up at the end, it's just too massive to even understand. Like the ship is huge that they go, like the human ship is huge, but this
Yeah,
thing is just like way bigger than even you could even think of.
yeah,
Um,
it's completely gigantic.
yeah. Ed Harris, the whole movie was try like sort of slowly going near it and slowly figuring out what it was and understanding. As opposed to, Lindsay, she understood right away somehow.
Mhm.
He took a lot longer and it was a slow journey, but he finally did get there.
But the thing is that like his heart was in the right place the whole time. Like if we're talking about like
Yeah, it was. It was.
his view on his relationship.
It was. And but the thing is, like it's like that sacred knowledge sort of thing
Yeah, yeah.
is
Like he's like
he
he's
understood it to some degree, but he didn't he but not to a deep degree. And that's why he had to go to the abyss.
yeah.
And so like what were the things that did guide him down there though? I'm gonna do this in like, so what did Ed Harris do right? And then what did Coffee do that was wrong? You know what I mean?
So well for starters, like Coffee was on a mission of war and Bud was on a mission of peace.
I wouldn't even say Coffee was even on a mission, you know?
Uh he was I don't know, his mind was on war and violence
Yeah.
and suspicion.
I think he was such a I think like he is kind of I think this is kind of where evil comes from,
Mhm.
is ignorance, and superficialness. Everything that Coffee viewed was through that lens. Everything that Coffee did, it wasn't even his choice to do it.
Yeah, well,
He was
like
being told.
he claimed to be under orders, but he did not
Yeah.
need to nuke the aliens. That was Coffee's. Like even the other soldiers were telling him, "Hey, this is not like we need confirmation before we blow this thing up." And he's like, "No."
Yeah. Coffee, what was guiding him was not his own intuitive morality. He was always looking outside for guidance, you know?
Yeah,
And then so when they were cut off from the outside of guidance, he was completely lost.
yeah, yeah. He went full Event Horizon.
Yeah. But that's what happens. That's what happens when you take all of your, you outsource all of your morality to things you trust, know it better, people you
Mhm.
trust that know the best way to be, and you sort of never develop your own sense of morality, you know? And so, but when those outside forces go away, you're just like a child. You're inept at dealing with any kind of problem, especially
Mhm.
something deep and,
Yeah, first contact with an
powerful.
intelligent species.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
and he was also obsessed with being in control.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is what weak people do, kind of. They need to be in control. It's like, remember Odysseus? He was
Mhm.
totally cool being like, "Hey man, I'm just a beggar. I'm just a beggar. And I don't need to prove to you who I am because I know who I am." And Michael Biehn was like the opposite of that. He always had to keep telling people like, "Hey, I'm in command. I'm in command," and Ed Harris never did. He was like
Yeah,
he was subservient, at when it comes down to it.
yeah.
And
Like he yeah. Because but Bud didn't need to tell his crew that he was in charge. He was
yeah.
just like he just had their respect.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
And
exactly. Yeah.
and like and yeah, there's even a point where the whole crew hates the military guys and Michael Biehn in particular,
Yeah.
Coffee. Uh, it's and all it takes is for Bud to say like, "It's cool, guys. We're listening to him now,"
Yeah.
and everyone falls immediately into line.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't need to make the case that he's in charge. He just says the word, and his crew just respects him.
Hmm. Yeah, and ironically, that's where real power comes from, you know?
Respect, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And one other thing about Michael Biehn too is how did each of them enter the deepest part of the abyss?
Yeah, like yeah, Michael Biehn falling backwards, looking up.
Falling backwards, looking up. Exactly. He didn't face anything head on. He didn't understand what he was falling into, you know. Whereas Ed Harris intentionally went down there with a guiding light. You know, it's
Yeah.
all very religious and
Mhm.
metaphorical.
So I guess we can spend like a minute on the rat. The
Yeah, the rat.
the the
I never really got to the bottom of what the rat was.
like the closest that I ever got was that like the rat is because there's there's the 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 popular colloquialism of rat leaving a sinking ship,
Hmm.
and the ship is sinking and the rat is in with the rest of the crew, like going down with the ship with everyone else, and so we're very a very a very loyal and brave rat.
Well, the rat actually, actually, there might have been three resurrections in the movie, because at the very beginning, the rat got resurrected. He went
Oh
into
yeah.
the he went into the breathing water, and that's sort of like rat. Another thing rats are known for, obviously, is animal testing,
Mhm.
and so like that the rat was the first to experience a rebirth.
So maybe okay. So the the magic breathing water
Hmm.
is like there is kind of this leap of faith aspect to it
Yeah.
where like the Navy SEAL scientist guy is like you have to you have to let it into your lungs. You can't
Yeah.
fight it.
Yep. You have to have faith, kind of,
Yeah,
right?
you have to believe that the magic breathing water is going to work. You have to like overcome your natural instincts to avoid drowning.
That's such a good point. That's such a good way to put it, too, because it is a spiritual, it is a lesson in spirituality, right?
Yeah.
Is, you have to overcome your natural urges. In spiritual literature, that's like transformation into becoming you know, a spiritual being or something. But in everyday life, your natural urges are things you're following without your own knowledge, without any intention. And
Mhm.
having that belief in that spiritualism allows you to overcome your animal urges. Yeah. And did you also notice when Ed Harris went down? There's just all kinds of symbolism here, but when Ed Harris was going down into the deep and preparing to in his his last dive to save them, and they before they filled his helmet up with the breathing water, they gave him new eyes. Remember, they put
Oh,
contacts in his eyes,
yeah.
so it's like that opening the third eye sort of thing. What didn't we see another movie too where people were given new eyes so that they saw the world in a different way? It's kind of Minority Report-ish, but I
Yeah.
think it's a common theme in movies.
So like there is kind of like as he's descending, there's this kind of like he's like the depths are kind of stripping away all of his safety measures.
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
he loses the camera, he loses the little floaty thing, like the thing with the motor, the only way that he could have gotten back up.
Hmm.
He loses communication with the rest of the crew at some point,
Yeah.
and at a certain point, like there is like it is just him, as naked as he can be without
Yeah. And
losing
he
the suit.
and then he does lose the suit at a certain point.
Hmm.
And the other thing too is, he was on that journey the whole time. He was on that journey to the light, and he was dependent on all those outside things. It's like the Michael Biehn to a lesser degree, but he was dependent on things outside of himself to make that journey. And yeah, the abyss stripped all of that away from him. And but he still had, he had the he put the fire in the glow stick,
Hmm.
and eventually that died too. It was almost as the abyss was telling him, just get rid of everything, man. Just be naked. And of all outside influences, just be who you are. But he still couldn't do it because he was still learning, because he still didn't see, still didn't understand a light yet. And he had that green light, that like bioluminescent sort of looking light, that
Yeah, yeah, like
glowworm
the glow
light.
stick. Yeah.
It wasn't the stick because that burned out, but the green light. And I think when he was doing so he had to he had to snip the right wire, or else the bomb would go off if he snipped the wrong one.
Hmm.
So he had to snip the right wire. And because he was using that green light, he couldn't see the colors at all. If he had just gotten rid of it, because he still hadn't learned yet, by
Well,
that
no, this
point.
this 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 is this is his biggest leap of faith in the whole movie is
Exactly. But he could have what I'm saying is he could have avoided it if he got rid of that safety thing. That
well then
little.
then he would have just been in sheer darkness. He wouldn't even he wouldn't even have been able to see the bomb at all without the
Oh,
light.
okay. Well, I thought that it had to do with like, because didn't he say there's light all around? There's light
Oh yeah.
everywhere.
Oh
So he
yeah,
could have
like
just used that light,
well
that
I think
natural light.
I think at this point we're not reviewing the movie that exists. We're trying to
No, no, I
improve that.
think.
Because what you were suggesting would have been a different scene where he would have thrown the glow stick away and then the light from the aliens would have been made the wires more clear.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I'm saying at that point, he'd gone that far in his journey, and he still was using outside light as a crutch. He still didn't understand. He still didn't get it.
Yeah, it wasn't until he actually like went down with the aliens that the final puzzle piece got locked into place.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing, is like, I think that everybody goes on this process at some point in their life, over the course of their life. In But what's interesting is when we go on this process, it's all murky because it's all mental. It's all psychological. This
Hmm.
is just a really good visual metaphor for that psychological process. I think it's very powerful because of that, And it's a very important journey because it's something that we have to get good at if we want to improve.
Hmm.
Um, but I mean, does that make sense? Like we go on these processes through life, right? We don't
Yeah.
go actually into the ocean, but we go into the ocean that's our mind, you know? And there's no instruction manual really for
Yeah.
doing that.
Using storytelling as a kind of low risk sort of marketplace of ideas is kind of probably a very ancient
Hmm.
tendency.
Oh yeah, that's what all the Greek myths are about. Like there's the whole Orpheus. Every time you go into the underworld in Greece, you're doing it's the same story. And there's a reason it's the same story. It's because it's a good story, because it kind of teaches people how to overcome darkness in their nature, you know? Like that's half of life, is that internal mind. The other half of life is the stuff that we interact with in the physical world, and we can touch and we can see and we can measure. But The other half of life, and it is half, is these internal psychological things that when you look at somebody that's having a psychological crisis, they don't look any different on the outside, you know. They might just
Yeah.
like look glazy-eyed, but there's a battle happening within their mind, you know, that they're dealing with. And like they've become overcome by by that half of their life because they haven't they that half is a mess, you know, so so bad that it's affecting the physical outside half. If you find yourself in some kind of an abyss, what do you think the the lesson of the movie then is to handle it? You know, we get into a mess somehow by being ignorant, and
Yeah.
and how do you get out of it, you know?
Well,
Or and
my
what
my my
is
gue-
the abyss? Also, that's another
my
thing.
my guess is that your answer to this question is that you get out of the abyss through knowledge or through knowledge seeking. That seems uh, at least that's where it seems like you're going.
Somewhat.
Okay.
What is knowledge though? You know,
Yeah.
this is getting too a little too abstract, but
So yeah, yes. Okay. So like
knowledge of
the
what? Knowledge of
yeah.
what, you know?
So I think there's also like that quote at the beginning, the Nietzsche quote, like when you look into the abyss looks back at you, which you sort of begin to take on the traits
Exactly.
of what you assume the abyss to be. So Coffee looked into the abyss and he only saw war and violence and threats. And that is exactly how he behaved throughout the rest of the movie. He was already kind of violent and distrustful and just becomes more that.
Hmm.
The protagonists sort of, as they descend into this very dangerous, scary situation, they kind of they build all these positive traits. They learn
Hmm.
to love and trust each other again. They have these almost religious experiences. They go into dealing with these alien creatures with curiosity
Yeah.
and giving them sort of the benefit of the doubt.
Well, yeah, when they were looking at the creatures for what they are, they kind of reverted back to childhood, like childlike wonder, you know, when they were looking at it. They were like, "Whoa."
Yeah, like like when when the tentacle, the water tentacle came up, and they were just like they're playing with it.
You know, they were playing with it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So and that really does strip you of, you know, like the Abyss stripped Ed Harris of all those things. It kind of
Hmm.
strips you of every kind of like face you're putting on, you know? And they were
Yeah.
all just like so in awe of it. They became children and like their inner child was awoken again, you know, and they kind of built themselves up again from there.
Yeah, because he stuck his tongue out
Yeah.
at the at the at the creature,
Yeah.
and they all had to get a good laugh about how it did it back to him.
Hmm.
They're literally looking into the abyss,
Yeah, yeah,
actually,
but in the
to see.
abyss, but in the abyss was like was beauty, you know, if you want to see that, like to your point.
Yeah, like like wonder and playfulness and more than anything peace.
Hmm.
Is the kind of is what they got out of this experience.
And I also think it's interesting too, like, you know, Inferno, like there are different levels to the abyss. Like you were saying, what was it called? The Metadenic or
Oh, Benthic?
oh benthic. Yeah. Like benthic is like the that's where the devil is, you know.
Yeah. Well, actually, there is the deepest layer is called the abyssal layer.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
All right, that's perfect then. But you know, even so on the surface, you had all the evil military people
Hmm.
dealing with a hurricane. And it's interesting how like the thing that locked it into my mind. of like all the layers are sort of connected is when that crane fell. Do you remember
Yeah.
that? So the crane fell, and then they were like, it was coming down towards them. It was going from, it was a problem from the surface, from
Yeah, well,
like
like the
superficial
thing
reality.
that was supposed to be their lifeline to the surface becomes this threat.
Exactly. Exactly. The crutches will always hurt you, always. And then it went down into a deeper level where they were, and then it just missed them.
Well, it also like the the crutch that they were relying on earlier dragged them down to a deeper level.
It dragged them. Yeah, it kind of like it did. It dragged them because they were relying on it before. That's going to come back. Nature always has a way of punishing you for
Hmm.
taking the easy way. Another thing that was interesting too is when Michael Biehn and Ed Harris were having their knife fight, there was like in between them, there was like a light that was dangling, you
Uh-huh.
know? Anyway, that's just a little thing where it's like, ah, the symbolism.
Michael Bean, like his weapon was a a military like Bowie knife,
Hmm.
and that's his background. That's where he comes from. And Bud had a pipe, like a metal, like the actual thing that these vessels are constructed of.
Uh-huh.
That
Yeah.
was his background. That was his weapon.
Yeah. Yeah. Which his wife made.
Yeah,
They're sort of like
they're
action,
totems.
I was gonna say action figures, sort of the the thing that comes with the action figure. Yeah, they're totems, exactly.
Yeah.
Um, well, another thing that was interesting too is so we were talking about like taking everything, stripping you of everything, meeting the abyss naked without crutches is important. It was interesting that like they needed to rip the shirt off of Lindsay. And
Hmm.
so she was reborn naked. So
So
she
this that one was I I didn't get like a rebirth vibe off of that. I got that a much more returning from the underworld like kind of vibe
Mhm.
out of that of like
Well, that is a
dying and then coming
rebirth.
back.
That
Yeah,
is a
I guess
rebirth,
so.
though.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a metaphorical rebirth.
And she just like with the magic breathing fluid, she did have to like let the water into her lungs.
Yeah, true.
And yeah.
But she was so much more advanced than everyone else in the movie, I think, that she could let real water in,
Hmm.
you know?
She knew that she was gonna die, essentially.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's sort of one of those things, too, is like to be reborn, you have to welcome dying.
Let me drown. So
Yeah,
the actual
exactly.
words that she uses, yeah.
Yeah, your physical body, you realize that your physical body is only a vessel, you know,
Hmm.
and that there's much more important things than the physical world,
Yeah.
like, and you can live on past your physical world as a good person, and that's almost more important than even living. It's interesting. So the abyssal creatures, so they did kill the the military crew.
Not really.
That's what I was sort of asking is I'm a little bit I was a
Oh,
little
on
bit
in the
confused
submarine.
at the very, very, very beginning.
So okay, so I'm not
And
gonna
it's
actually I'm not gonna place any thematic weight to the fact that the creatures caused the submarine to because they didn't intentionally destroy the submarine.
they didn't.
They just flew near the submarine and the submarine flew drove into their wake, lost control for a little bit, and then ran into some rocks. I got the impression of zero malice from
Yeah,
the alien creatures.
that's why that's why it kind of concerned me that the whole movie sort of like wouldn't have happened if the alien creatures um didn't. cause the submarine to capsize.
Yeah. Although, like, I don't know, maybe they could have felt threatened by the presence of a nuclear submarine.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Yeah. I thought it was interesting when you said like the difference between the nuclear submarine and everything is like precise and straightforward and everything, and our submarine is kind of messy and kind of like you can see the laziness around, but there's something lovable and authentic about it, you know?
It's more homey.
Yeah, it is. And like, you know, James Cameron is someone who sees into the future, you know. He's very concerned with what is the future of humanity, you know. All of his movies sort of like talk about like concerns about how to navigate into the future, which is a sort of abyss on its own, right?
Mhm.
Like it's this dark, unknown, unknowable place. I think he's saying the temptation to go into the future is to be over prepared with all these crutches around us.
Having everything be like prim and perfect, and uh everyone's in their uniforms, and marching.
Yeah.
And
And it very
we do get.
technologically that like
Yeah.
technology can be a crutch.
Hmm. And we do get a little bit of this later on in Cameron's movies, where like in Avatar, the scientists are all like disheveled and like wearing Hawaiian shirts and have like long hair and beards and stuff.
Yeah.
And then all the military guys are just like the military guys in this movie, where they're perfectly manicured hair, and every one of their military fatigues is like super proper and
Yeah.
perfect in every way.
He doesn't like military guys.
He doesn't.
He probably flunked out of boot camp at some point. Taking out a revenge. You know, I mean, there's other movies that kind of talk about, you know, we do need a military, you know, because we still live in a horrible world and where
Well,
that's
like
necessary.
I think
But
if you want a great example, like Michael Bay, who
uh-huh.
like dips into like military fetishism
Yeah. Yeah.
of
But
of
it's
like
like,
of like I'm making a movie about giant robots fighting each other. How are we going to get the Marines in here?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is the opposite lesson. It's like
Yeah.
maybe we should do Michael Bay next. No, I don't think there's enough there. I don't,
Yeah.
but that's the thing too, is like James Cameron is a very intentional filmmaker. He understands all the symbols and the reasons for it. Um,
Yeah. It might be fun to like try to like tease out a theme of a out of a Michael Bay
I
movie.
don't know, but you know, maybe we'll be surprised. Who knows? You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
I haven't really done that in watched his movies that seriously yet. So if the future is an abyss, did we discuss like did we come to a complete answer of because I have one of what it's not going to be technology that allows us to go into the future. It's it it's not going to be the military. It's not going to be something where there's some playbook, you know.
Hmm.
I think it's our humanity, you know, and our seeking of truth. You know, what are you searching for? It's the truth, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think like the takeaway that Cameron wants humanity to learn in this movie, and I think it's very important to remind everyone that it's 1989.
Yeah, exactly.
uh, what Cameron wants is peace. Like he wants humanity
Yeah.
to stop spending so much lives and treasure on war. This fully negative sum endeavor.
Hmm. And war can be, you know, like myths. I keep saying myths are multiple things. So
Yeah.
war is one way of saying divorce, you know? So like there's wars between countries, and
Hmm.
the symbol of that in the movie is a nuke. There's
Yeah.
wars between people, individuals, and the symbol of that is the ring, and a divorce,
Yeah.
right? And there's also a war within yourself, right? And the symbol of that in the movie, I think, is the darkness versus the light. And it all
Uh,
gets, and as you, well, just follow me, just follow me.
okay.
As you get more focused into the core of a lot of these problems, which is at the end of the day, the war within each of our minds, it gets more and more abstract. So the nuke is very unabstract. The ring is because there's a purpose for it. There's a use that you can use it for. The ring is more of a symbol, and light and dark. There's nothing more abstract than that. You know.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm not gonna, I don't think I can follow you where you're going here. The idea of like war at multiple levels of abstraction. I don't think that the internal decision to do the right thing can really be described as a war that's being sort of metaphorically equivalent to the larger war above the surface. I think the symbol of the Cold War as a person is coffee.
Well, coffee. So who is
So like
coffee? Who is coffee fighting against, though?
he's just this concept of like being filled with rage and distrust and only viewing like the world through a lens of war and violence, and
Yeah.
that's kind of his character. And he's kind of like you don't need to have an internal war in any of the characters because the entire Cold War is just represented by this one character.
I think that it begins in that abstract internal, all the external, everything external that's bad can be, when you boil it down. And I'm just saying this is what's in the this is I'm just analyzing the movie.
Yeah.
I'm saying when it's boiled down and you strip everything else, what you're left with is this light versus dark conflict. And within coffee, it's pretty clear that the darkness consumed him. He was
Yeah.
completely consumed. And just take a whole nation or take a whole world of people that are consumed in that darkness. And then you get a bunch of coffees, then civilization is over. If
Yeah, because
you,
if both sides of the Cold War behave like coffee does, then we have a nuclear holocaust.
which is what happened. That's why there was a Cold War. It was a spiritual war.
Yeah.
And the
Like
Cold War was like a pressurizing event where we had to face that.
yeah, like it was just mutual distrust that fueled the whole thing.
Yeah, exactly. There was one scene that I really loved, which we've talked about. And actually, I cried 3 times during the movie, actually,
Oh. Oh
which I,
wow.
which I don't do a lot. I cried when what's her name?
Lindsay?
I cried when Lindsay died, and then was brought back. I, I cried at the very end when everything was over and he was coming out of the alien ship and everything,
Yeah,
and they were
that
reuniting.
was a good moment. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I also cried hardest and like tears going down my face and everything,
Oh wow.
when Ed Harris was communicating from the deep to the ship. There was just something so powerful about this, like, again, imperfect communication because he's misspelling everything and everything.
Hmm.
That kind of humanized it so much. And it's like, man, this guy is you felt like he was a real person that you knew, and he was
Yeah,
gonna
like he's
die,
yeah, like
you know?
he's under all like the stress and pressure of knowing he's going to die,
Yeah,
and it's still like he's still trying to reassure his crew, despite the fact that he's the one who's in the most danger.
yeah, yeah. And he was so serene about it. And yeah, he would rather do a good deed and do good in this world than live. you know?
Yeah, and like that, and that like that was that supposed to be a moving scene because that was supposed to be the act that moves the aliens to
To save
believe that
him.
humanity, yeah,
Yeah.
or that to save humans in general because of the giant tidal
Yes. You're
waves.
totally right. You're totally right. And somehow control the hurricane? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe that was just a coincidence.
Like I
Um,
like we can assume that the powers of the aliens are functionally infinite. They
yeah.
whatever they can do, they whatever that happens, they can do it.
That's
They're
why
just
this is the Cameron Ex Machina series. Because
yeah, yeah.
he's he has a good word in with the Machina, the God Machine.
Yeah.
He utilizes it liberally. But
Mhm.
the thing that really got me was when she was talking to him while he was going down and everything was coming out, all the darkest things that they've held in that's been keeping their relationship from working.
Yeah.
It was just because it was the last time you were going to talk to him.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
everything was
that's
just totally honest, and even the bad things, of like
mhm.
she just told him in when she when she couldn't before the truth, and that's what allowed him to go deeper and to keep going was the truth, you know, at the end. At the end, it's the truth. Going into the abyss, going into the future, the way to approach it is not by putting stuff in the way, and that's what technology is. It's the truth and that it's the seeking the truth and honesty that will allow humanity to go on.
Yeah. I don't exactly gel with the notion that going into the abyss is the same as going into the future, but it's pretty clear that that we're supposed to take these lessons and use those lessons going forward and as humanity to be more compassionate and peaceful.
Yeah, which I hope everybody agrees with
That war
their vision
the
of
yeah,
of the
that
that vision
that
of the future.
war is bad. Yeah, I think that's I think the notion that war is bad maybe an explored concept.
Yeah. Um, but I think war is actually a symptom of much deeper problems, you know.
Yeah,
That
of
that that's what
like
happens at
of
the end of everything else going wrong.
your fundamental mistrust of other humans eventually causes this to break out.
Yeah. And we'll solve that on the next episode.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Uh,
We solved war here. We'll solve suspicion later.
and that was the Mythic Movie Maker podcast.